In 1936, the British Empire dominated many countries. At that time, all young people who finished their studies and wished to work for the government were sent to remote regions for training. The story begins with John Truscott, a young Englishman who has just graduated and is sent on a mission to Sarawak to work in the British colonial administration. His goal is to help civilize the local population and modernize the region, in line with British ideals. A man who speaks his language approaches him, greets him, and then takes him to meet the local governor, Henry Bullard, who welcomes him. Henry asks John, given all the other options available to him, why he chose to come here. John replies that his father served in this place and that he wanted to educate the local population. He is here to fulfill his father's wish. However, Henry doubts John's chances of success. He lets him know that it is pointless to teach these people. Later, a young man named Belansai leads John to meet the local tribe's chief. John greets the chief respectfully. Then, a beautiful young woman named Selima brings him a drink, but John politely declines, explaining that he doesn't drink while on duty. Belansai explains to him that refusing the drink would be seen as an insult. John eventually accepts and drinks with them. Afterward, Selima and her friends begin to dance to entertain John. At one point, Selima removes her necklace and places it around John's neck. Belansai then asks John to do something in return, like dance, sing, or recite a poem. John chooses to recite a poem, but the villagers don't find it very amusing. He then decides to pull Belansai toward him and dance with him, which makes everyone laugh. The next morning, Henry introduces Selima to John, explaining that she will be his sleeping dictionary. John, intrigued, asks what that means. Henry explains that Selima will live with him, and they will sleep together. He specifies that if John wants to adapt to life here, he must learn the language, and Selima will help him with that. Henry adds that in order to truly master the language, he needs to be intimate with her, claiming that it's the only effective way to learn. John is baffled by this idea, as he doesn't even know Selima. She intervenes, telling him that she chose to be with him of her own free will. Eventually, John accepts the situation but tells Henry that he has no intention of having an intimate relationship with her. Henry doesn't get upset, but Selima, on the other hand, seems slightly irritated by John's words. Later that night, Selima is seen trying to teach John the language. However, John seems uncomfortable being so close to a woman he doesn't know well. He feels awkward about the situation, and after a moment of hesitation, he asks Selima to go to bed. The next day, when John returns home, his cook introduces a boy to him and tells him that he can be intimate with him. The cook had assumed that John was homosexual because he had refused to be intimate with a woman. Upon hearing this, John becomes extremely angry and orders the cook to remove the boy immediately, telling him that he will not tolerate such nonsense. Frustrated and annoyed, John asks Selima to bring him a bottle of whiskey. Selima, upset by his attitude, throws the bottle at him. In response, John fires her. Furious, Selima leaves the room and tells John not to follow her. The next day, John meets Selima and confesses that he finds her very beautiful. He explains that the reason he hasn't slept with her is related to his personal beliefs. He tells her that, in his society, things don't work that way, and he cannot simply be intimate with her without a genuine connection. John sincerely apologizes to Selima for his behavior the day before and asks her to resume the language lessons. Selima agrees, better understanding his reasons, and accepts to continue helping him. Later that night, John and Selima begin to grow closer and sleep in the same room, but on separate beds. Selima asks John if he has ever slept with a woman, and John replies that he won't do so before marriage, as that is their custom. Selima points out that if he has never been with a girl, he will be inexperienced on his wedding day. John scoffs at this idea, telling her that he will take classes to prepare. He then asks her why she chose him. Selma replies that she thinks John is different from other men, which makes her want to help him and establish a connection with him. The next morning, John tries to teach the children, but this displeases Belansai, who sees no point in the children learning. He tells John that the school is simply trying to turn them into little Englishmen. John, trying to ease the situation, reminds Belansai that he knows he can stay underwater for a long time and that he is the champion in that area. Belansai, proud, confirms that he is still the champion. John, full of challenge, then invites him to a diving competition. To everyone's surprise, John wins the competition, which makes Selma smile as she watches the scene with amusement. In the evening, Selma is reading a book. John tells her that his mother used to read the same book to him during his childhood. Selma replies that her father also read a version of it to her. Afterward, Selma recites a poem for John and then starts teaching him the language. She also explains the parts of the body, like the feet, and they begin to touch each other, which leads them to kiss and sleep together. They continue doing this regularly. One night, while they are lying on top of each other, Selma gets up to return to her bed. John asks her to stay, but she explains that according to their tradition, if they wake up together in the same bed the next morning, it will mean that they have to get married. The next evening, Henry invites John to his home. His daughter, Cecilia, has just returned from England after finishing her studies. They share dinner together. Cecilia explains that she has researched this place in England and discovered many strange traditions. She mentions that a new officer arriving there is accompanied by a young girl to teach him the language. She is unaware that this tradition is still in practice and wonders if there might be feelings between them. Henry, however, points out that it wouldn't be appropriate to establish feelings in this way, as it is just a tradition. John, on his part, emphasizes that it is possible for them to develop feelings for each other, just as he himself has feelings for Selma. But this idea does not seem to sit well with Henry. Afterward, John returns home and finds Selma, who has changed her look and become very beautiful. A smile spreads across his face, and they passionately kiss, savoring this moment of intimacy. The next day, John takes Cecilia around and shows her various places while explaining the local tradition. Cecilia, enthusiastic, takes photos of the locals. When she takes a photo of Selma, Selma does not appreciate it at all and asks John to tell Cecilia to stop. However, John feels unable to do so, which angers Selma, who is frustrated by his lack of support. Then, lifeless bodies arrive down the river on a canoe, presumably struck by a dangerous disease. John tells Henry that he is going to investigate the situation. That evening, John returns home and apologizes to Selma. He asks her if she has slept with another officer, like him. Selma answers affirmatively, as she is angry with him for not protecting her when Cecilia was taking photos. She tells him that he is just like the others, and John realizes how truly angry she is with him. The next day, John, Selma, Belansai, and others travel up the river to investigate the epidemic affecting the Yakata tribe. Many people are infected by this mysterious disease. Suddenly, John is attacked by a man, but Belansai arrives just in time to save him. Together, they chase down the attacker and discover that many people are secretly mining silver. John then realizes that these miners are responsible for the disease. Upon their return, John finds out that Selma has also been infected. He remembers that she ate rice offered by the miners to the Yakata, intending to poison and wipe them out so no one would discover their mining activities. John reveals the whole truth to the Yakata, who decide to take revenge and eliminate the miners to protect their community. Meanwhile, John realizes that he is falling in love with Selma. He confesses his feelings to her and proposes marriage. Selma tells him that the English would never allow a marriage with someone from an Iban tribe. John, determined, assures her that he will find a way to resolve this issue so they can be together. John speaks to Henry about his desire to marry Selma, and Henry reacts angrily, telling him that it is not allowed. He adds that it would be disrespectful to the British government. Aggie, Henry's wife, overhears their conversation and intervenes, advising John to forget about Selma and move on. She makes him an offer: if he gives up Selma and agrees to go to Britain for a year of vacation to meet Henry's daughter, Cecilia, she will drop the matter. But if John refuses, Aggie threatens to put him on trial for the deaths of the European miners. Meanwhile, the tribal chief asks Selma to marry someone within the tribe and let John go. Belansai also pleads with her to set John free, but Selma, stubborn and in love, refuses to listen. As a result, they decide to lock her up to prevent her from seeing him. John comes to see Selma, but she reminds him that she had warned him their union wasn't possible. Henry gives John and Selma a final warning: if they do not obey orders, they will both end up in prison. To protect John, Selma, though heartbroken, tells him she will never see him again to spare him from such a fate. A year has passed, and John has married Cecilia, but despite this, he can't stop thinking about Selma. After their wedding night, John and Cecilia return to Sarawak. Upon their arrival, the tribal children warmly welcome them. That evening, they attend a film screening, but John can't stop looking around for Selma. Cecilia notices, sensitive to his inner turmoil. Back home, Cecilia tells John that she knows everything about him and Selma. She reveals to John that Selma is now married to Belansai and even has a child. With kindness, Cecilia tells him that she hopes he will also find happiness with her, expressing her desire to build a joyful life together. One day, while John is walking by the river, he spots Selma with a young boy. To his great surprise, the child has light skin. John realizes that this boy is actually his own son. He returns home and questions his cook about it. The cook confirms that the child is indeed his son. John asks him to arrange a meeting with Selma, but the cook explains that he has already tried, and Selma refuses to see John. Nevertheless, the cook promises John that he will devise a plan for him to meet Selma and their son discreetly. Eventually, John manages to arrange a secret meeting with Selma and their child. When they meet, Selma warns John that if the tribe members saw them together, they would kill her. Despite the tension, John, moved, sings to his son the song that his father used to sing to him when he was a child. John begins to spend time regularly with Selma and their son, cherishing every precious moment. However, Belansai, Selma's husband, tries to kill him. The next day, Henry explains to John his past with his own sleeping dictionary and reveals that he had a daughter with her, and that daughter is none other than Selma. John is devastated by this revelation. Subsequently, Henry decides that John must preside over the trial of Belansai for attempting to murder a colonial officer. When Belansai is arrested, he is sentenced to hang for his crime. Selma is heartbroken, because although she is no longer in love with Belansai, he has been a good father to their son, Mundar. Despite his own sadness and reluctance, John has no choice but to announce the sentence. Later that night, Selma attempts to help Belansai escape, unaware that John is already at the prison. When she arrives at the cell, she is surprised to see John releasing Belansai and giving him a weapon for his escape. As Belansai flees, John asks Selma to meet him at the dock so they can escape together by boat. When John returns home, he discovers that Cecilia is pregnant, throwing him into deep confusion. He begins writing a farewell letter to Cecilia, but she reads it before he can give it to her. Aware of John's lingering feelings for Selma, Cecilia tells him to go to her and live the life he truly wants. She promises not to tell her parents, showing remarkable generosity despite her own situation. Selma waits for John at the dock, but he arrives too late and she is already gone. The cook informs John that Selma has fled towards the border. Meanwhile, Henry finds Selma preparing her canoe to escape. Selma believes that Henry has come to arrest her, but to her great surprise, Henry reveals that she is his daughter. In a gesture of acceptance, Henry gives her his gun and lets her go, giving her a chance at freedom. Aggie is furious with Henry for letting Selma escape, but Henry firmly replies that he knows what's best for his daughters. Aggie orders Neville to find and kill both John and Selma. Meanwhile, John searches for Selma through the jungle. When he finally finds her, they passionately embrace, overjoyed to be reunited. But their moment is interrupted by Neville's arrival, armed with a pistol. He handcuffs John and begins to harass Selma. Suddenly, members of the Yakata tribe appear. These tribe members are the ones John had previously saved from death. Grateful, they kill Neville, saving John and Selma from danger. Despite the rescue, Selma is overwhelmed with sadness. She knows she can never go back, because if she returns to the Iban tribes, she will be executed. She tells John that if he chooses to stay with her, he will have to give up his old life and remain in the jungle forever. She reminds him that the life they lead here is isolated and there is no turning back. John, with sincere love, tells her that he needs nothing else. As long as he is with Selma and their son, he is happy. They are finally reunited as a family, ready to face the future together despite the obstacles. All three, John, Selma, and their child, live happily in the jungle, free from any outside constraints. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on our videos. Thank you for supporting us by sharing the video, and once again, thanks for watching.